I'm Noah Abrams, and welcome to The Days Between, the show where I talk to my friends, people I admire, and people I want to better understand about success, failure, happiness, and misery, as well as all the other elements that make up a life well lived. Along the way, we'll look at mental, spiritual, and physical health, and when life didn't go as planned, the steps they took to get themselves from A to B and beyond. This week, I'm speaking with Tatyana McFadden. Born with spina bifida and paralyzed from the waist down, she spent the first 6 years of her life in a Russian orphanage with very little medical attention. Without a wheelchair to aid her, Tatyana learned to walk using only her arms, and in doing so, began building the physical strength and mental willpower that would eventually lead to her becoming the fastest woman in the world. In 2004, Tatyana made her Paralympic debut in Athens as the youngest member of Team USA, where she took home the first two of her medals at just 15 years old. She has competed in every Paralympics since, and in the summer of 2021, took home the 20th medal of her career at the Tokyo Games. It was during her freshman year of high school where Tatyana first experienced the discrimination people living with disabilities often face, setting her on a path of advocacy, resulting in the passing of Tatyana's Law, which requires schools in the state of Maryland to give students with disabilities equal access and the opportunity to compete in interscholastic athletics, a law which would ultimately become federal legislation. Having 24 major marathon wins under her belt, including 4 consecutive Grand Slams, her passion for racing and impact on the sport is undeniable. During the course of our conversation, we discuss her humbling foray into the Winter Games, the drive that keeps her going on and off of the track, as well as the importance of perception. With a natural humility and accomplishments that have at times even surprised herself, please enjoy Tatyana McFadden on The Days Between. I am here just outside of Baltimore, Maryland, with Tatyana McFadden. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are not from here, Baltimore.
Oh, I was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, and I was adopted at age 6.
Tell me about life in Russia.
So I was born with spina bifida, and that's where you have a hole in your back, and usually you get surgery immediately after birth, but for me, that wasn't the case. I was in the hospital for roughly 21 days with an open back until I finally had surgery. At the time, my birth mom could not take care of me. If you remember in 89, that's the fall of communism. So there's a big shift in Russia, and financially she just couldn't do it. And so she had to do the hardest thing and put me in an orphanage and hoping that I would have a better life. And I lived there for the first 6 years of my life with no medical treatment, no schooling, obviously no wheelchair. And how I got around was that I walked on my hands, I scooted on the floor. For me, that was very much normal. I didn't know anything else. And I remember being a pretty spunky kid. Wherever the other kids were going to be, I wanted to be there as well. And the 6th year happened to change my life when I was adopted. And my mom, I have 2 moms, but one of my moms, Deborah McFadden, she was there on a work trip. And at the time she ran an adoption agency called ICA. And so she was purely there on a work trip, trying to spot the perfect match for families. And yeah, shortly after that, before I knew it, I was on my way to the U.S. And coming to the U.S. made a lot of first things happen for me. I had lots of surgeries growing up because my legs were atrophied behind my back because I didn't have any tendon releases. And so to sit in a wheelchair pretty normally and to straighten out my legs, I needed that surgery. I started school for the first time and I started sports for the first time.
And you mentioned the surgeries. Those were to
straighten out my legs. My tendons and my nerves were so tight because I've been crawling and scooting on the floor. So in order to sit in a wheelchair, normally like I do now with the feet, on the floor, I needed them to be straightened out. So, when you lay down to bed, you lay completely flat. So I needed that to be done. So I had several surgeries as a young kid. And I walked on braces for a while to kind of strengthen up my bones as well.
What kind of outlook did the doctors give you?
I feel like the taboo thing in the US is that when a child's born with a disability, either with spinal cord or spina bifida or really any type of disability, they always go by the book and think of what they can't do. Like go to school full time, hold a job later in life, can't travel the world and can't do normal tasks like grocery shopping, just like your daily life skills. And I was very weak. I mean, had malnutrition in growing up in the orphanage. And so the first 6 years are obviously very important in your developmental life. So I built skills the majority of the world doesn't have. Like, for example, I did an NHK film with Japan. It's called Miracle Body. And they did an MRI scan of my brain, and they had me do different activities like, okay, move your hands up and down and move your feet. And when they said move my feet, like the part of my brain still lit up like I was moving my feet, but it would be in reality my hands. And also what was interesting was the will part in your brain. Mine was 1% bigger than the average person. And so that was probably 100% due to growing up life in the orphanage. So I think coming to the US, I just could figure a lot of things out and wanted to try everything.
So the sports were as much
kind of like rehab,
but there's certainly a confidence end to that as well, I would assume.
Absolutely. I mean, sports definitely builds confidence, and you learn about team building skills, you learn about goal setting, and I needed to get stronger so I could push my wheelchair all day long. I could go to a friend's house and get around, and just daily life skills that sports taught me. So I mean, every single weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, my parents drove me to the Bennett Blazers in Baltimore, and they watched me play sports for like 4 hours. And I did swimming and ice hockey and wheelchair basketball and table tennis and fencing and even wheelchair racing, which I absolutely fell in love with. But I played many different sports growing up. And, I had to learn how to like retrieve the ball when it fell off my lap, and even swimming, which I was horrible at, just having the endurance to go up and down. But it taught me a lot of skill sets, and it taught me to be very confident because I could be so able. I could do anything that I wanted to do. It built obviously tons of muscle as a young kid. And it helped me to problem solve of how I was going to get around in a world that's so ableist. It taught me how to build small goals because we had, wheelchair basketball tournaments and we had nationals. And so it just taught those small different tasks that I learned really young, fortunately, because a lot of people are still learning this as they grow up. So sports taught me so much, and it taught me to be confident myself and really appreciate myself. And that's why I really push the younger generation just to be involved with sports, not to become like an elite athlete, because that's not what I was striving for, but just that self-confidence.
What was it about wheelchair racing that stuck?
I don't know if it was, the need for speed as a young kid. But I think I enjoyed it that it was so individual, because basketball, you had to be on a team. And this, I could be like, okay, I want to go this fast today, and tomorrow I'll go this fast. So I think like personal goals is what I loved about it.
Do you remember the first time?
It was out at a track in Baltimore. My first racing chair was Bob Hall's racing chair. So Bob Hall is the one who actually started marathons for us in wheelchair racing. So he finished a marathon in under 3 hours. The Boston Marathon said, if you can finish this marathon in under 3 hours, we will add wheelchair racing into marathons. And so it was really cool to actually use one of his chairs that he donated to the program. Yeah, I wasn't very good. I mean, my parents jogged right next to me. I wear like these baseball gloves and had spoked wheels and a very unaerodynamic chair. Yeah, I just kind of enjoyed it. I wasn't very fast or very strong, but I liked it.
But it clicked.
But it clicked, yeah.
I've heard you say that there's some misconceptions about your chair. And I was wondering if you can just talk specifically about the racing chair.
I think the big misconception about our racing chairs is that it very much can look like a bike or a hand cycle, but the way that it's built for aerodynamics and stability. So that's why there's 3 wheels, 1 at the front and 2 at the back, and a long beam in the front, essentially to hold your weight and to keep the chair together. But there's no gears on our racing chairs. The only thing that we have is a brake, obviously for safety when we're going down hills or if we need to stop on the track. We have a compensator that we hit when we go around the track. We have a front fork that helps us turn on the road left and right, and that's it. So however fast I'm going that day is how fast I'm pushing myself. So there's a lot of factors for us in wheelchair racing, like the wind and the weather and the way that you turn. So those all can play such a huge role that you don't really get from cycling as much because you can hit yourself in different gears.
But also your weight and the weight of the wheelchair is being propelled solely by your arms.
Exactly. So the wheelchair weighs about 18 to 20 pounds. So I would say the best way to describe it is for just an average person. The next time you go for a run, strap like an 18 or 20 pound belt and go running, because that's what we carry. We have to carry our weight and we have to carry the weight of the racing chair. So you can feel how hard it is, and that, we're using our arms, which isn't as big as your legs. So training plays a very specific role so you don't get injured.
You begin wheelchair racing. I'm assuming your English is getting better. You're going to school. Your confidence is increasing. At what point do you decide, hey, I want to be an Olympian? Because it's one thing to be competitive, to enjoy sports, but it's certainly a whole other thing to say, hey, I want to compete at this level. And I'm curious, at what point did you internally make that decision?
I really enjoyed sports by the time I was finishing up 8th grade. At that point, I was training obviously every single day, either before school or after school. And it was 2003 when there were advertisements in the newspaper about the Olympics in Athens. And I thought, well, that's so cool. There's a games for people who are like really good at what they do. And I thought, well, I want to go. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, look, like the Olympics are coming around and there's so many different like sports. And I did the research on, the computer and just reading about it and seeing it on TV. I mean, there was no other social media outlet at that point. And I was just really inspired, I think, just by what I was seeing and what I was reading. And I thought, well, that is so cool. Like I really want to go there. When I was starting 8th grade, we had to write down our academic goals. And so I wrote down my academic goals. And then at the very end, I wrote, want to head to the 2004, Olympic Games. And I say the Olympic Games because I thought, oh, everyone goes to one games. There's no separate. So I didn't even know about the Paralympics. And so at the end of the year, I got that back and I was getting ready to go to trials. So that was very cool. At that point, I think I was just like living and breathing wheelchair racing, just loving it so much. There's nothing else I wanted to talk about besides just track at that point. So yeah, I was really young when I tried out. One of the youngest in history for track and field. Everyone was twice my age and nobody thought I was going to make it because it was my first big competition like that at nationals. And I had no idea what I was doing. Knew that I needed to get top 3 and just had fun. I mean, I didn't know anything else besides just being in the moment and being present and getting the job done and making the team.
So you compete in these trials and then what happens?
I was top 3 and I think I shocked everybody, even myself, that I made it because, like I said, I was competing against girls who were in college and with no experience.
So in 2004, at 15 years old, you become the youngest member of Team USA. You competed in the 2004 Athens Games, in which you won 2 medals.
For track and field, yep.
Silver in the 100 meter, bronze in the 200 meter. You are in 8th grade at this point?
Yeah, I finished up 8th grade. Yeah, after the games, I was heading straight to high school.
So you come back to Maryland, and then what happens?
When I entered into high school, I didn't obviously become professional, and my parents, said education is very important. So I finished up high school and later went to college. But when I was a freshman, I wanted to be part of a club, and track was obviously the best fit. But I didn't know.
When you say club, you mean a high school team?
High school team, yeah. You could either be part of the theater club or chess club or, whatever club. And there's a sports team. And I was like, oh, sports is perfect. They have high school track. And I was like, I want to be part of that. Obviously it fits perfectly for me. And I didn't know what was going to come out of it. The only requirements for high school track is that you have to have a certain GPA and you just have to go to practice every day. The requirements were so low. So I did all those requirements, obviously, and we were getting ready to have our very first track meet. And I remember getting in line for our uniform. And when it was my turn, the athletic director, I don't really quite remember what he said, but I didn't receive my uniform that day, that it was going to be held off for a little bit. And I thought, well, that was so weird. Why are they?
And they didn't give any explanation.
Not at that point. So I went home and I was like, hey, Mom, this is kind of what happened today. I don't know why I didn't receive my uniform, but we have a track meet coming up and I just don't really understand why. And so she just called, the school system and was like, what's going on? And at that moment, that's when things started unraveling. My mom was like, what's the big deal? Just give her the uniform. She's going to be going to that track meet. And finally he gave it to me. And when I went to that track meet, it was in Howard County and it was so awful. So I rode the bus separately. When I competed, they stopped the entire track meet, had me go around. I think the time I was doing the 400 and the 800, maybe the 15, but I would go around in a circle and then they would continue the track meet. As a high schooler, you're like, this is so weird, right? I was like, this almost feels like a pity, I'm the only wheelchair racer and I'm the only female wheelchair racer. I was like, this is so wrong on every single level. Why can't they just throw me in with everybody and then just go around it's high school. It doesn't really matter, right? And so that kept happening until we got to, I forgot how the qualifications go, but it was just a step above your local high school track meets. It was getting ready for the big nationals. And
so this happened multiple times.
Yeah. It happened multiple times. And I thought, well, okay, this is part of the routine. And one moment that changed my entire life was going to a track meet that was out of Howard County and into a different county. And I wasn't even supposed to go that day. but I did. I maybe someone forgot to keep track. They were like, yeah, we have a track meet. It's going to be out of Howard County on Saturday. Please be here at 6:30 because we're going to load up and leave. It's quite a drive. And so I was like, okay. So I told my parents, I was like, hey, there's a track meet. It's going to be out of Howard County. So I was there ready to go and there was only one bus. And I was like, oh, that's weird. There's only one bus. I asked a couple of the guys to carry me on. They carried me on. They loaded my racing chair in the back of the bus. They just opened, the back and threw it right there. And I got on the bus with everybody. And I was like, this is fantastic. I don't know what happened or what mood change happened, but I'm on the same bus as everybody.
Tell me how that felt.
It felt really amazing. That's why I was like, oh, there must be a shift in someone's attitude. Maybe someone realized I can get on the same bus. And it felt great. There was music playing. Everyone was chanting. Everyone was laughing. I felt really inclusive. I was part of the team.
And up until that point, that had not happened. And you had just accepted that was the way it was?
Yeah. So when we went to another school, a neighboring, school in Howard County, I would get on that Lyft bus. A few of my friends would get on with me, which was really sweet and really supportive. And then, yeah, everything was so like separate. And then I would compete by myself. So it was until that track meet, but it happened by accident because I wasn't even supposed to be there. So when I arrived, every athlete has to check in and they say, are you doing these events? And, you tell them yes or no. So I go up and I was like, oh, it's like, that's weird that I'm not registered. And the sprinting coach was there that day at the track meet. And I was like, hey, I'm not registered. He was like, oh, no problem. Like we all will see what's happening. What I didn't know either was one of the volunteers who was working knew about wheelchair racing, and they worked at nationals for wheelchair racing. And they're like, oh yeah, this is no problem. We'll put her in right here, with everybody else. Like this is how we would do it. So they knew automatically how to be inclusive because they've had history with wheelchair racing and just with youth track meets. And so that's how they did it at those track meets. And so I was like, oh, this is awesome. And so I remember lining up for the 400 and I was really excited and really nervous. I had butterflies, and my mom came to that track meet and I was going against one of the girls who was like a reigning champ in the 400 meters. We get on the starting line, and when the race goes off, it takes me a while to get started. We wear racing gloves and you have to hit the hand ring. So it just kind of takes a little bit to get momentum. So I was like halfway behind. So when she reached, the 200-meter mark, I finally caught her in the last 200-meter mark. And the crowd was going like nuts, like wild, and everyone was screaming and so excited. And I think we finished like neck and neck or something. And I remember going to my mom and I was like, this is the best day of my life. Like, look how awesome this race was. And I didn't get any points because at track meets you accumulate points and that's how, you win. But I didn't really care about that. I cared about that I was finally being included with other runners because I was the only one. So that was the best day. And little did I know when I came back, that Monday, I was so in trouble. The athletic director was like, you should have never been at that track meet. And I was like, what do you mean I should have never been at that track meet? And so I told my mom like what he told me. And so she called and she was like, what is happening? That's when we know that I was 100%, being discriminated against and that it would forever be like this until we did something. I just got lucky at that track meet. That one volunteer knew what to do and knew how to work with para athletes and how to integrate them equally with everybody else. So I knew I had to do something at that moment, and I just had to figure out what the next step was.
And what did you do?
We sued. My mom, she was one of the 12 authors of the ADA. She worked under the first Bush administration for disability rights and making a lot of bills pass through for people with disabilities. And so she knew the game well.
And what did you sue for specifically?
We sued for no money, but we sued for the right for people with disabilities to participate equally in high school sports. That's it. And it wasn't just me that was, being discriminated. It was against other athletes with other disabilities that was also being discriminated against as well. And so I thought, if this is happening in the 21st century, we are teaching those high schoolers at that moment that it's 100% okay to discriminate someone with a disability. So when they become employers, if they have someone with a disability coming in wanting that job, they were taught to turn them down. So it was the hardest 4 years of my life to do that, to go through the lawsuit, being so young. And yeah.
And what became of that lawsuit?
Well, what became of that lawsuit is a federal law. It was the right thing to do. And I think that's why it passed so quickly within Howard County, and then next the state of Maryland. And then when I was in college, it became federal. So now every school has to mandate participation in high school sports and help figure out equipment for those students. And we still have a long way to go because there are still schools who don't follow the rules and will still not have that athlete participate. But it was a step. Hopefully it'll get better and better.
So in 2008, the state of Maryland passes the Fitness and Athletics Equity for Students with Disabilities Act.
It's a mouthful. Yep.
In that same year, you compete in Beijing
Yep.
in the Paralympic Games at 19. You win 4 medals. 2012, you follow up in London with 4 more medals, 3 of which were gold. 2013, you compete in the World Championships and become the first athlete to win 6 gold medals at the same competition. Later on in that year, you become the first man or woman, able-bodied or disabled, to win a Grand Slam. Can you explain what a Grand Slam is?
So Grand Slam is winning 3 major marathons, and I happened to win.
So this isn't just competing. This is winning.
This is winning. Yeah, this is winning. It was Boston, London, Chicago, and New York.
And you do that in 2013.
Yep, 14 and 15.
And 16?
And 16. Yep, it's crazy.
Tell me about the 2014 Sochi Winter Games.
Those were really special games. When I found out that the games were going to be in Russia, when I found out the bid won, I was so excited. And I went into my mom's office. My mom's like my manager. I call her my momager. And I was like, you won't believe it. Like, you won't believe where the next games are going to be. And she just kind of looked at me and she was like, it's going to be Russia. And then obviously Rio. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if I went there? And she was like, do you want to commentate? You know, we could probably find a place for you to commentate, you know, and work with NBC. And I was like, no, I want to go as an athlete. She was like, what sport are you thinking? And she's like, ice hockey? Like, do you want to be the first like female into, you know, playing with males? And I was like, no, cross country skiing. And she was like, cross country skiing. And I was like, yeah.
And how much experience did you have skiing at that point?
None. I only had experience in downhill skiing and in ice hockey. I did both of those growing up. And so I had no experience in cross country skiing. And she was like, why on earth do you want to do cross country skiing? I was like, well, one, I can't get injured for Rio because I'm not going downhill 90 miles per hour. So I threw out, you know, downhill skiing at that point. And I was like, look, like you need endurance, which I have from marathons, and you need strength, which I have. And I was like, how hard is it to learn technique? And it was like the hardest thing to learn. I was muscling everything. I didn't have the finesse. I looked like a hot mess out there.
Well, tell me about day one cross-country skiing for you. Coming in, having achieved what you've achieved on the track. What was that like? Was that humbling?
Yeah, it was really humbling, but it also like threw me like way off. I mean, I started over in something I didn't know. And I remember the coach was like, you're wearing too many layers. Take off that like puffy coat. Like you're wearing too much already. And so I had to relearn everything, proper clothes to wear, how to fuel for, you know, a ski session, and how, you know, the technique of it, that it's mostly like your core and your arms are there just to kind of like stabilize it. I had to relearn like everything. Like I was starting over in sports like I was a kid.
And your plan was to do this at an Olympic level.
Yeah, that was my plan. I was like, that was my plan. Yeah, to do this at a Paralympic level.
Were the coaches supportive?
The coaches were supportive. John Farrow was the coach at the time, and he was very supportive. You know, we were a very young adaptive program. There wasn't tons of cross-country skiers, and you know, we were trying to build women on the team, and so they were very, very supportive in helping me ski. Obviously, there were people there who were like 10 times better, you know, than me and have so much experience. But it was also really hard because at every World Championships that I competed in, I was like so bad that you had to turn the page to see my results. And I got a lot of comments like, why are you doing this? Like, shouldn't you really be focusing on your summer sport? You know, like, why are you here like skiing? Pretty much like you weren't good. Please go back to where you came from. And I thought to myself, like, there's a bigger goal. And I got really frustrated at the last World Cup in March, like literally a month before we left to go to Sochi, I was like, I'm not doing well at all. Like, I could possibly not make this team. They don't have to take me at the time. And so I was really emotional at that last World Championships, and I just didn't know what to do. I just wasn't skiing very well, and I just wanted to like prove myself. And so finally at the sprint, I made the finals into the cross country sprint. So that led me to be top 5 automatically, which was awesome. And that boost really helped me to make the team. I mean, I didn't qualify for biathlon at all. Like, that was not in my skill set. And so I only qualified for the sprint, the middle, and the long. But I knew my only shot was at the sprint. And I just did those other 2 just to literally practice my technique and get ready for the sprint. And but it was amazing. It was always a dream of mine to bring my birth family and my adoptive family to a competition. And this was a perfect opportunity. And so I brought them on the sponsored money that I had and the money I won from marathons, and put them on the plane. They never flew before, and put them up in the hotel. And it was the most amazing, fulfilling experience I've ever had. And it was just a cherry on top to win.
2 years later, 2016, the Rio Games.
Yep.
6 medals.
Yep.
4 gold, 2 silver. A year later, 2017, you won the Chicago Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
2018, you won the Boston Marathon. 2019, you got second in the Tokyo Marathon, the Boston Marathon, the London Marathon. In the 2021 Tokyo Games, you received your 18th Paralympic medal.
20th.
20th. My apologies. I want to put you on the spot here real quick. What do you think it is about you? Is it a drive? Is it the competition? What is it?
I love competing. It's obviously brought so much into my life. I mean, even competing in, Sochi and competing as a young kid, and sports just brought so much. It brought health, and it brought drive and an ambition, and being brave and goal orienting and being confident. So that's why I really love it. And then I'm obviously competitive. I love being the first, doing a lot of things, being the first. And I love pushing myself. I just really enjoy it. I want to just figure out how to be a better self and a better athlete, and using my skills and see how far I can take them. And I reached a really bumpy road in 2017 when I was diagnosed with a blood clotting disorder. So I came from such a high, right, from 2016 earlier on, then being pretty much hit in the face with this health condition. And so it took about 20 months to recover after that, when I was diagnosed in February 2017. And I had 3 surgeries to try to break up the clots, but they were pretty much set in stone. They're going to be there forever. So I had to figure out other therapeutic ways to, 1, stop clotting, and 2, to work out that lymphedema. And racing became really painful, and I didn't know if racing was going to be in my future at that point. So that was really, really scary. And so each day I just had to do what I could and hang on and not let go yet of what I love so much. So I am, really proud of myself of what I've accomplished in, 2018 and 2019, and even the Tokyo Games, because I feel like I've had to have come so far, because I was set back 20 months and then I had to move really quickly up to, even make the team, and to be on the podium, and then not competing for the longest time. And so it's been really quite a journey. I feel like I've rewritten my story a lot since 2017, but that's part of racing. That's part of competing. And I think that's, why I like it. You don't know what's going to come. It's hard. It's challenging. I love pushing the sport. I love talking about equality in the sport. We've had really great changes so far in the marathon community. And obviously in the Paralympics, where we're now receiving equal pay. So that's really quite amazing. So it's fun being in the now and how much the sport has really changed.
In 2020, the Netflix documentary Rising Phoenix came out.
Mm-hmm.
You appear in it. You were also a producer on it. You mentioned in the film that it is so much more than winning medals. The film, for those people that haven't seen it, documents several athletes as well as the potential debacle that the 2016 Rio Games could have been. It addresses the issue of not having money for the games, not having tickets sold. I'm not going to ruin the ending for those that haven't seen it. But according to a 2011 World Health Organization report, more than 1 billion people in the world are living with some sort of disability. That's about 15% of the world population, or nearly 1 in every 7 people, making people with disabilities the largest minority group in the world. And that was done over 10 years ago. The last time that a survey like that was taken was in the 70s. And even then, the numbers weren't exact. So it's pretty safe to assume that since then, the numbers have increased. In his book, Sport and Contemporary Society, Professor Stanley Eitzen calls sport a microcosm of society and says that focusing on sport is simply a technique for understanding the complexities of a larger society. How much of your experience as an athlete mirrors your experience as a person living with a disability?
That's a great question. I think the greatest thing was, sports gave me a voice and that confidence and that leadership because I had to go through that lawsuit. I experienced discrimination and I experienced what it was like to be in that minority group and being discriminated, well, a large minority group and being discriminated against. And I think using your voice for the good is so important. And pushing the boundaries and in teaching people. That's why I was so proud to be part of Rising Phoenix because it gave me such a creative outlet. It was such a different project than, going out there and, sweating in a marathon and coming in first or second. It was such a different way. It was 9 different stories being told, all really quite different stories from different countries. But we had one thing in common. That was how people with disabilities are portrayed, globally and what we need to do to move in the future and how we use sports to help make that drive happen. Because I really do believe that sports is an equalizer to help push equality into society. I mean, you see it in athletes today, the women's soccer team pushing for equal pay. But it was amazing to be part of that documentary. I remember sitting down with the directors way before we started filming and just kind of going over the history of disability and where the word handicap came from and my experiences, how I've been treated having a disability, and of course talking about my lawsuit and how society sees someone with a disability. I feel like society, when they see someone with a disability, we all have to look a certain way, but that's not the case. We're just like everybody else, where people are going to look different. We don't all look the same. And I wanted the directors to push the boundaries and to have disability look at such elegance and almost make people forget that we even have a disability. And they did a great job because the opening scene was Bebe, the Italian fencer, in this beautiful ball gown. Then you see Jean-Baptiste running with his leg and you see every muscle. And it showed this beautiful elegance of these athletes. So you saw the athlete first, and then you saw their disability second and going through their stories and their journey. So that's what I wanted to capture as it told the history of the Paralympics and how it originated and how it started. Because no one wants to read a 1,000-page book on the history of the Paralympics. That's incredibly boring. And the reason why I also wanted this film to be done and to be pushed was that we always have a good games, a bad games, a good games, bad games. So we're always like up and down, up and down. We're not really...
When you say good games, bad games, what do you mean?
Well, as in like visibility, as in the game's almost not happening and not being, funded. And
so you're referring to funding, ticket sales, media coverage.
Exactly. And just the support of the athletes, the whole package deal. And so we have to kind of figure out how to work the back door in. And as we want the experience of the Paralympics to keep going up and up and up, this is such a great visual thing for people to see and say, oh, that's what the Paralympics is. Like, it's in the parallel to the Olympics. And I've gotten so many wonderful comments. And thank you. And one reporter asked me, do you think the film is too elegant? And I was like, no, it is like perfect the way it was done. It's not too elegant because it smashes every single stereotype as what people think of a person with a disability.
2019, the U.S. Census Bureau found that workers with disabilities earned 87 cents for every dollar earned by those without disabilities. It is also legal to pay workers with disabilities less under the Fair Labor Standards Act. As you mentioned earlier, in 2018, Paralympians were finally paid the same for medals as Olympic athletes, where it used to be Paralympians were paid $7,500 for gold. They are now paid $37,500, $5,250 for silver, $22,500, $37.50 for bronze are now getting $15,000. That's almost a 400% increase. How did that feel?
Well, one, it felt amazing. I mean, clearly Paralympians love what we do. It's not about the money. I wish it happened earlier because, there's been so many advocates before me and those athletes didn't get to see that. That's why I'm trying to push everything possible so the future athletes and the current athletes can experience all of that. I mean, it felt amazing and it felt like such a relief because we had to keep our head swimming above water to figure out, okay, how are we going to pay for our equipment? Because racing chairs are between the standard carbon one, $9,000 to $25,000. And we have wheels that are $2,000 a piece, and as well as the front wheel, which is $1,500. You have tires on top of that, which runs about $100 each tire. And then you need to get spares on top of that. And then you need to think about paying your bills and nutrition on top of that and traveling. So we had to be very creative on how to stay on top so we could win medals, And I also on the side had to marathon to be able to do all this and to be able to afford training.
You were using your marathon money to pay for your Olympic.
Yes, okay. As well. And then every 4 years, I was very blessed with very good, support from sponsorships. BP was one of the first sponsorships where I had, and they had equal contract for all the athletes. They didn't pay any Paralympian less than the Olympian. And so that was such a huge step back in 2012. So that was before our equal pay. And I love the sponsors that I had because we've had a very honest and open relationship in saying, we need a lot of support because I only get to see you wonderful people every 4 years and we don't get paid equally, to our Team USA athletes, even though we're doing the same work, putting the same time and effort and everything. And so very fortunate to work with sponsors and to help push the boundaries within them. So they are now sponsoring more Paralympic athletes and understanding the importance of that. So we had to do all that work before because I didn't even know if we were going to even see equal pay in the future. So that's why I was very fortunate for that. And I was very fortunate for marathoning and having that be my constant for my source of income, which is really, really quite important. And again, pushing boundaries within the marathon community as well. And we've come such a long way in that. So, I feel like we shouldn't say, oh, we're so blessed to have it now. It should have been done a long time ago, but it wasn't.
Well, that's what I think is so interesting. I mean, in 2018, the Olympic Committee agrees to pay the athletes the same. A year later, in 2019, the USOC, the United States Olympic Committee, changes the name to the United States Olympic Committee and Paralympic Committee, USOPC. Right. And this is in 2019.
I know.
This isn't 1950. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So we shouldn't say that we were blessed. It should have happened a long time ago.
A word that comes up in the film is perception. How important are people's perceptions of those living with disabilities?
It's very important because having a perception of someone with a disability, that's where we say we can pay them less. That's where, we can say, oh, well, just, give them that job. It's we're checking the box, essentially. And so we need to change the perceptions, the way people think, by talking about disability and by saying it's not a taboo if you say the word disability. And, the reason why I love Europe so much is that they have like these comedy shows, and they even have people with disabilities on them, and they like make fun in such a good, genuine way just to get that conversation going. And they're not taught, that saying disability is such a bad thing. Whereas in the US, you could see it when I'm at the grocery store, if a little girl or a little boy goes, "What's that?" The parent immediately goes, "Shh, shh, shh," like, we don't ask that. We don't say what it is. I think the coolest comment that I overheard was when I was on the track and the son goes, "Oh, Dad, what's that?" And he was like, "Oh, that's a racing chair," and so that made me so happy because that felt like took so long to get even to that part. But, they're starting to know exactly what it is, and saying, "Oh, like that's a wheelchair for her to get around because her legs don't work." Like, "Oh, isn't it cool?"
How do we change those perceptions though?
Well, I think doing a lot of behind the scenes work. I mean, it's a lot of the Paralympic athletes coming together and being one big group. It's much more than just a conversation every 4 years. I feel like a lot of athletes are doing it in their own communities. We also get together and we talk about, what can we do next to continue this conversation, to continue this talk. So we do work together. It takes more than just one person doing it. It takes an entire village. And I think being active on social media, talking about it that way, and, doing really fun, creative videos, and not making like a joke about it, but, making it kind of funny that people can laugh and be like, okay, like that's really cool. But I think just trying to keep the conversation going constantly instead of every 4 years. So at each marathon, it's been really quite amazing because it gives me the opportunity all year to talk about it. I worked with the Team for Kids in New York City to start a wheelchair division because they do a lot of wonderful support with the youth and the community and providing shoes to run and participate. And I said, well, what about the athletes with disabilities? We can definitely support them as well. We need to start a wheelchair division going because these kids can train together. So if they train together, they see, oh, Tim is not so different from me. He's out here running and we're all together. So that's what I did. And I worked with the New York Road Runners to start that. And I donated a racing chair. And from there, we've developed a great program that works in the Tri-Cities around the East Coast area. And so it's been really responsive, and it's much more than just a social media post. I have to be careful saying that because New York Road Runners is doing a lot more equal post with everything, with the elite athletes, with the youth, but they're also going above and beyond that by actually providing these services for people with disabilities. And so that's really, really amazing to see that.
Well, clearly, it seems you feel a responsibility to change perceptions.
Yep.
Where does that come from?
I think it comes from my mom. I mean, my mom was actually paralyzed from the neck down. She had Guillain-Barré, and it's just an autoimmune disease. And doctors still to this day don't really know like how it happens and, whether if you can get 100% better or not. And so she was paralyzed literally from the neck down. And so she had to fight for equal rights in college. She went to the University of Maryland, and so she barely graduated from there. But for her finals, at the time, she couldn't write her exams. She had to talk out her exams. So you either needed someone there to say the answer is B and have them fill it in. She couldn't write at the time. And the University of Maryland wouldn't provide those services for her. And so my mom did a lot of advocacy just for that, because they almost didn't allow her to graduate, which is unbelievable. I think she understands where I want to go, and we can have these conversations because it was very relatable, and she personally knew what it was like to be discriminated. And she walks like fine now. She's living like a normal person, and she doesn't have a disability anymore. She's not in an electric wheelchair, and so she understands 100% where I'm coming from, and she's been a great support in helping me push about it and talk about it. And I think that's where the drive comes from, is her.
Your professional achievements in racing almost defy comprehension and are absolutely undeniable. What's the drive now?
I want to win up to 30 marathons.
Why 30?
I want to get close to my age. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool if I can get close to my age. I feel like I have a bit way to go in competing. I still have a lot left in me. The sport's just changing so fast, and I want to be able to keep up with it. And the science behind it is amazing. And I want to be having an all carbon fiber chair. Would be my next dream, and either getting one or designing one would be awesome. Definitely, I want to win 4 golds again. I think that's very much possible. And so, I feel like I have a lot more work to do because I can do it. I have that time still, and continuing speaking and eventually starting up my own foundation. So I have a lot of good things coming up.
With everything that you've accomplished, when you get in the chair and the race is about to start, is it still the same feeling?
It is. Yeah. It's still the same feeling of being nervous and apprehensive and trying to think tactics in the race and what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are compared to what their strengths are and their weaknesses. This is what I'm thinking at the starting line. Like, okay, my competitor, she's really good at that downhill. So exactly where you need to be. And you're really good at, climbing. This is where you need to be at. So,
but all strategy aside, just you, when you're in it, you're in that moment. Does it still feel the same?
It does. I feel like I'm an older, wiser version of myself and much more knowledgeable, much more appreciative of the sport. And I've learned to be more in the moment, which is good. I felt like before 2016, I was just like, go, 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 go. Do this race, do that race. And it was a lot of that. But I think I'm much wiser now.
How do you define success?
Well, I think leaving a legacy, having people talk about the sport, or having people talk about disability like it's normal. I feel like that's how you find success, is that when you reach that level, when you wake up and you turn on the TV and you see commercials with people with disabilities in it, you see disabled actors that are actually disabled, on TV, that you see more disability throughout social media, continue to pushing boundaries with our wonderful sports network, having equal hours. Those kind of moments I think is success, because you've made it. Like you've pushed it. You've pushed the boundaries. People are listening. People are responding. And I think a little more than winning medals, because you can win all these medals, but you could be the most difficult person to work with or not want to push the sport. You can just be like, I'm happy with winning and that's it. I don't want to do anything else, which is fine. But I think the success is when you've driven the people around you to that, that same movement. So it's just like those little moments behind the scenes of just, being bam, 20 medals and 24 major marathon wins. It's all the other stuff that comes with it.
How do you define failure?
I don't really believe in failure. I think they're like teaching moments that you have to change something if you're not going anywhere. You either have to change your training or change your eating or, change the way you post on social media or your talking points, or it just means you need movement and that you need change.
Can you name a professional failure that ultimately set you up for success? That at the time may have felt crushing or just couldn't see the light, and that ultimately set you up for a win?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, there's been several moments. For example, in 2008, I was like the reigning champ. I was supposed to win the 100 meters. And for that day, for some reason, the nerves came over and I couldn't start. Like I could not get off that line. And I was in 8th place. I was like devastated. I was upset that I couldn't put anything together for that reason, for that moment. And I thought, like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? I can't set anything up. I, thought, oh my goodness, people are going to think that like I'm a failure. I just won against, the toughest world competitor and everything was great and I couldn't do this. But it was definitely a teaching moment that, I needed to step back and just relax, don't let the nerves take over, and that like you're going to be fine. You're going to wake up and, that one race is not going to define the rest of your life, and how to shift my attitude, from that mindset. And I did a great shift because I was able to win I got second in the other races. So if I didn't change my mindset, there was no way I was going to do well. So that was a really big teaching moment.
How do you define happiness?
Well, happiness is wanting to wake up to go to training, loving what I do, playing with my dog Bentley, hanging out with my family, traveling, speaking. I love being busy. Yeah. I think just doing what I love.
What would you say to 6-year-old Tatyana?
You're doing a great job. That's what I would say to her, that your future looks really quite amazing. Continue to be an advocate. You're going to have really tough days coming up. You're going to be fighting a big fight, but it's all going to be worth it. And just continue each and every day. Just take those small steps in what you can do and just enjoy the process.
How would you describe what you do for a living?
Probably nuts, because when I was doing those back-to-back marathons from Chicago to Boston, I did 52.4 miles in like 24 hours. And I was thinking, why did I think this was a good idea? So it's probably like nuts. It's thrilling. And it's exciting because you never know what the outcome of the races will be. And it's fun. It's tough. It's really, really tough.
Tatyana McFadden, thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The Days Between is a production of Noah Abrams Studio. Story editing by Andrew Henry. Mixing and mastering by Greg Henkin. Website and design by John Fisher. Theme music is by Evo. The Days Between can be found online at www.thedaysbetweenpodcast.com and on Instagram at The Days Between Podcast. My name is Noah Abrams. Thanks for listening.